Perfect. We're going to get started now. So to start off tonight, this is the finance workshop of the series for the Be Your Own Boss Bowl this year. Today we have Ellen Weber, who is Executive Director of Robin Hood Ventures, as well as Mid-Atlantic Diamond Ventures Group here at Temple. So we're very excited to have her with us. This is our second to last workshop. We have one more after this, which is the Pitching 101 workshop, where we focus on how to convey your message through your presentation. It's going to be a very exciting workshop that we have, as we have a new speaker coming with us. And the link will be included in the next coming slides. And then the last workshop we have will be, or the last event we have is our expert mentoring night, which will be Monday, February 25th. And then Ellen, you're good to go to the next one.
Oh, whoop.
I know, it always gets so twitchy. So we have provided everyone with the submission resource folder, so you know what you're submitting and how to make it to the best of your abilities. This QR code takes you to a Google Drive, which has tons and tons of documents and folders and examples, templates, you name it. This link, obviously you can scan the QR code, and I will be adding a link in the chat shortly. As well, if you have the application page for the competition, the link is included in the event description as well. So be sure to check those out before you submit, as there is some key information that you may miss out on if you do not check it out. Alrighty, here is the link. And then Ellen, you're good to go to the next slide. The next slide includes information on our finance folder. There is lots of information on what financial projections are, profit and loss statements. And I personally have no interest in finance, as I know many of you also have no interest in finance. But it is a big thing, a part of business. So we want to make sure you get a great understanding of what it is and to start your business off great. And now we're going to kick it off to Ellen.
Okay, thank you. It's nice to see. It's nice to see all of you here. I've met a number of you in the past, so I'm going to go through the financials, which I do know is it's not everyone's favorite cup of tea, but it's super important, and it is how a lot of people make their decisions as to whether a company is investable or not, or whether a company, is is going to make progress. So it is really critical. So we'll try and make this as much fun as we can. Now, so for the BYOBB, there's 3 submission requirements for financials. One is a 3-year income statement, and we'll go through that. And it should be detailed, and it should include the detailed assumptions. And we'll talk about assumptions as we go through this. The pitch deck will have a very high-level slide, and we'll show that as well. But you can't do the high-level slide till you've done the detail. So don't reverse the order. You want to go deep into the detail and then pull up to do the slide. And then in the executive summary, there's some language to use. So we'll talk about what goes in each of these pieces. It's a small group, so feel free to interrupt me or stop me along the line. So we'll start with, these are the things I'm going to cover. What is a P&L? Why do I care? What's the basic format look like? How do you tie your assumptions to projections, and that, etc. So we'll go through each of these topics. And the slides, they're not mine. I'll start with that. In some cases, the pictures are fuzzy because we don't want you looking so closely at the numbers, just kind of the layout. So if that looks fuzzy to you, it's not that your eyes are bad, and it's not that the person put together a bad slide. They want you focused on the words on this slide. So we're going to start with the profit and loss statement, because you're responsible for putting that together. And sometimes you'll hear it called an income statement. Sometimes you'll hear it called a profit and loss statement. If you hear it called anything else, that's possible as well. But bottom line, it's supposed to show sales, or revenues, costs, and then what your profit is or your net income. And there's a lot of different terms along the way, but that's basically it, you know what it is. What are you taking in? What's going out? What do you have left? If you think about it that way, it simplifies it a lot. The rest are just labels. So, so the P&L is the profit and loss statement. For startups, it's going to be loss, 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 break even, and then profit, right? We don't expect to see anybody. It would be rare to see anybody making a lot of money in the beginning. But it shows how much money your business has earned and lost within a period of time. And for the purpose of the BYOBB, and actually, if you're doing an investor pitch, it's also looking at what's the future holds. What are you projecting will be your P&L? Okay. So why do it? Why have a P&L? And again, here's another fuzzy example. This is Gary's Garden Furniture, right? It shows revenue, sales, interest revenue, some kind of gains that he had, and then different expenses that he had, and they lay these out. And then they subtract the revenues for the expenses from the revenues, and they end up with a net income, which is, or a profit, however you want to call it. But there's a couple of purposes. For running your business, you cannot run your business without knowing if you're making money or not, right? Let's say you had a consulting business, and you had a couple of employees and they were all, you have a social media company, let's say, right? You got a bunch of employees and they're working with different clients, and you may be bringing in a lot of money, but are you actually making money? By the time you pay for all the employees and other things, are you actually making money? Or might you make more money just doing social media as a job for someone else? So, you want to try and understand, what are your results? How are you doing? And for the purpose of the BYOBB, you use a P&L to create the projections for where's the company going? How much revenue are you bringing in? Where are your costs coming from? Again, are you in fact profitable? It helps identify and plan the cash needs that you have. And then what is also nice is if you build the assumptions behind it right, you can change an assumption and see what impact that will have. And we'll talk about that when we get into assumptions, because the assumptions from my viewpoint are more important than actual projections, because projections are always wrong. I have never seen projections be accurate. What we want to understand is, what's your view? What are you thinking about? What matters? What are the different factors? How deeply do you understand your business? That's where the assumptions just speak volumes. I'm going to stop there because it's been kind of generality, but any questions so far? Okay. So as we go through this, think about your own business, right? And Linda, I know your business, so I may pick on you a little bit if you don't mind. Okay. You probably get picked on a bit.
It's okay.
Okay. Thanks. I know you can take it. So, okay. So again, P&L, and you'll see these statements, there's different labels each time. Don't get hung up on the labels. Again, it's how much money am I bringing in? How much money am I spending? And what do I have left at the end of the day, right? So, this is just a way that one of our former mentors just used to break it out. There's revenue that comes in, right? There's cost of goods sold, which are directly related to the sales of goods and services. So, what might an example be? Anyone jump in for your business. What's a cost directly related to the things that you sell? Okay, I'll give you another example. I'm McDonald's, right? I have a McDonald's franchise. I own a McDonald's franchise. What are some of the costs of goods sold that are directly related to the number of burgers or chicken things that I sell each day? What are the costs directly related to those costs to the sales of goods and services? What are some of the direct costs? Anyone?
Everything on the menu, the physical locations,
Well, so everything on the menu, yes, right? So if I'm selling burgers, then the cost of the meat, of the oil, right? That is directly related to the sales of the goods and services. The location, maybe not. Some people think of the location as different because it's not directly related to the sales and goods and services. I could sell it out of a truck. And I could have the same location if I have no customers or if I have a zillion customers, right? So I think about cost of goods sold are those things that are directly related. So McDonald's, so that's an example of McDonald's. How about napkins? How about that's directly related, right? The more people that come in, the more paper goods that you might use. And if a law came out and said, you can't use plastic anymore, right? So plastic forks are a direct cost, right? And a law comes out and says you can't use plastic silverware anymore. Now you have to use bamboo, right? You think your costs go up or your costs go down? Costs of goods go up. Stephanie says up. Probably go up, goes up, right? So that's why you want to break down all your assumption as detailed as you can, because things happen. Grocery stores in Philly can't use plastic bags anymore, right? You have to use paper. So what impact does that have on the grocery stores bottom, sales of goods and services? Okay, then you look at and if you look at revenue minus cost of goods sold, those expenses that are directly related to selling the product, that's where you get your gross margin. Some people call it contribution margin. There's different terms, but basically it gives you a sense of if business scales up or down, how are you doing? And then you have the operating expenses. And those are the expenses for running a company not related to the actual sales of goods and services. So that's where I would put the rental location, right? I would put that under operating expenses. What else might go under operating expenses? I've got a McDonald's, location. What else might be an operating expense as opposed to directly related to costs to the sale, to the, direct sales?
The point of sale system that you're working on, sanitation and cleaning supplies for the building itself, the employees are an operating expense.
Employee salaries, perfect. Those are great examples. Thank you so much. Okay, great. And so when you subtract that out, that's the number that we care about for the purpose of startups, for the purpose of BYOBB. Then there's a whole bunch of other accounting terms. Are there any accountants in this group? Okay. So if you're an accountant, you really get all excited about things like earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization. That is so a whole nother world from startups. You're not paying taxes. You're paying employee taxes, but you're not paying taxes on income because you don't have any income, right? You just don't have any of these things. So we don't worry about everything we don't worry about any of those interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization. So the assumptions are really, really key. And the better you can define your assumptions, the better you are. So I teach a class on creating a pitch deck, and I have people really, really get into the detail about all the assumptions. Again, down to how many plastic forks and what's the cost per plastic fork. And if it's bamboo, what's that going to, really, really detailed. So the numbers, if you just show someone a P&L, that's a really important document. And most financial people, most business people can look at that spreadsheet in a minute and get a sense of your business, but it doesn't tell the whole story, especially if you're a startup, because when you're looking at the forecast, it's all about the unknown and the unknowables. There's no way you can really know these things, right? You're taking your best guess. So that's where the assumptions become very important. So what I tell people is create a spreadsheet with every single assumption you can think of and do it out month by month for the first year and maybe quarter by quarter after that, but as detailed as possible, your best guesses, right? And so again, I mean, down a level of, again, how many cases of forks do I need? How many, how much hamburger do I think I'll need to buy? Let's do a different example than McDonald's. Anyone want to be a guinea pig?
Yeah, can we do a service instead? Because mine's a
Sure.
service.
What kind of service?
I'm selling a program.
What kind of program?
It's a program we go into firms and organizations. We can call it like a women's professional development program for the sake of ease.
Okay. Okay.
And so I guess my thing is like for that, the program's already been created with just my time and education. And so I have, if I sell it, I have very little expenses related to that because it's already been created. So everything else is just like overhead.
Right. Okay. So then let's focus for you on what some of the detailed costs might be. Throw out a couple. What you think your what your just your operating costs might be.
I mean, like, my salary, obviously paying me, which sounds silly, but not that. I mean, just like the administrative of it all, the networking events, the meetings, the time to build those connections to sell to those people.
So it's not the time necessarily, but you're right. It's if you have to pay to go to networking events, that's a cost. So networking for a service business is definitely a cost, right? If you do trade shows, there's not just the cost of the trade show, there's the travel to the trade show, there's the creating the printing materials or getting getting a graphic designer to put beautiful slides and materials together for you, right? Those are all costs of doing business. You need some type of insurance, right? Most clients won't let you in the door unless you have some form of insurance, even if it's just you have to have, it's like they want you to have $1 million of liability and other insurance, right? So get, you want to get as granular as you can. And for some business, it's a little less granular. Again, a services business, it is a little less granular, but I had a services business and I was surprised just how granular I could get. It got easier over time. I used QuickBooks, and every time there was an expense, I would think about, does it fit in one of these categories I created for my forecast? And if it doesn't, you create a new one. You're constantly learning, right? And then you're always forecasting. So anyway, so you're gonna have a spreadsheet with all these different assumptions. Who's got something that's not a service business per se? Linda?
Yeah.
All right.
Sorry.
So talk to me. What do you think some of let's start with your revenues. What's your revenue stream look like?
So 3 channels, but really initially to start a direct to consumer e-commerce platform, right? But in the future, employee benefit programs through HR to be able to help working parents, and then pediatricians and payers lastly. But the reason for the buildup is, from a payer and pediatrician perspective, right? They need significant clinical data to be able to demonstrate that partnership. So one question, Ellen, is like, the partner development, and I have a line item in my P&L for that. Would that fit in operating expense or cost of goods sold?
I wouldn't get too uptight about which it is. I think of cost of goods sold more when I'm thinking about products,
Got it. Okay. Got it.
So
Got it.
no one's going to ding you because it's above the line or below the line, but they do want to know, they do want to get a sense of your gross margin, right? They want to know that you understand if business gets better or, if you get more clients or less clients, what will change with that. So, all right. So what you heard Linda say was she has 3 lines of business, 3 revenue streams, and she's breaking them out under revenue. And that's so important because each of them has a different assumption. They're each a different channel. And at any given time, with experience, Linda might end up saying, this channel that I thought that was going to be so fruitful, it's really not all that good. So I'm going to close that one down. And how does that change my projections. Well, it means I've got to do more with the first one or the second one now, right? So by breaking it down into 3 components and having assumptions, of the cost related to those 3 different, it just helps you think about changing your business. So when change happens, when stuff happens, you don't have to panic about what does it mean. I think of these as little levers almost, right? You got these levers that you're playing with. And when one thing goes up, something else goes down, or when one thing goes up, something else that you really got to, you got to put a whole lot more into something. So, so the assumptions should be really built out. Once you built out the assumptions, then you can, have it all feed into the income statement or the P&L or whatever the heck you want to call it. The assumptions are a living document. And one of the things I recommend is showing your assumptions to as many people as you can, because they're all going to know something that you might not, right? Like you might not have thought about putting insurance because you're a sole proprietor. So why do I need insurance? But I can tell you, as someone who, did programs and client sites, you need insurance. So you want to share those assumptions. And a lot of times, when my investment group, when we're doing due diligence with a company, we're looking at, we look at the P&L you put together and the pitch deck, and it's like, okay, that's great. We can see what the trajectory is and what the growth is. Now let's look at your assumptions, and we'll get really into the nitty gritty and help you think through all those things, right? So it's important to have those assumptions documented, and you will do much better in the BYOBB, the better your assumptions, the deeper your assumptions are. Okay. It's definitely something that judges look at. It's definitely something investors look at. And you want to make sure that the assumptions are linked to your forecast. So when you build the spreadsheet, have them link. If you don't know how to do that, find an Excel whiz down the hall who can do that for you. Okay. Or use, as Temple, I think alums, and definitely as Temple students or staff, you can use Linda. I think it's Lynda. And she under LinkedIn, and she just has all kinds of great materials for free. So think about the assumptions that you're making. Does anybody else want to test drive the assumptions for your business? We can all help you.
Is there an example within maybe I missed it. There's a lot in that Google Doc about again, how you said to kind of lay out the assumptions. Like I understand the concept, but how to actually communicate it clearly is a different story.
Yeah, that'll be that. They'll have that. Okay. And one of the things, so here's one of the things I recommend, and Emily, they're allowed to use ChatGPT, right, for this? There's no reason why you can't, right?
We don't say, just don't make your whole thing ChatGPT is the only thing. Reviewers do look at everything. I know I use ChatGPT all the time to come up with social media posts or emails. So it's a great place to start on inspiration.
Let me show you here. So it's hard to read, but I didn't care about the level of detail. I mean, I didn't care about exact things. But so what I did was I didn't even go to ChatGPT. I just Googled cosmetics company expenses, right? And so I came up, it gave me all of these, as these are expenses that you have to think about when you have a cosmetics company startup, right? And then you could dig, if you use ChatGPT to keep doing, more, you can get the data. The other thing that is even better than this is the librarian, the business librarian at Temple has so much data on every industry imaginable. So if I don't know if it's still Dan or not, but if you told him that you needed, that you wanted to see, financial assumptions for a cosmetics company, he would have so much stuff for you, and he could tell you, it would actually give you here are the actual ingredients, that, for a typical company, right? But in each of these categories, you're putting in your own. So let's say you had a cosmetics company, that what your raw materials are, because that's kind of your secret sauce, right? So you would use these categories as guides, and you can do this for almost any business. So I found this helpful, and there are lots of examples. I didn't have one handy today for this, but I know it is in that folder, and if they still have, one of my favorites was that I know we used to have in there was it was from Jessica's company, Emily. It was an app for employee benefits, and she just had a beautiful built-in spreadsheet with all kinds of assumptions. So if that one's there, I'd take a look at it. But you just start with a simple spreadsheet, Google spreadsheet, and just start listing, everything you can think of, and then it'll just start to coalesce and come together. Does anybody have one that you've started that you'd be willing to share? No. Okay.
I was going to say, Ellen, I have mine.
Want to show it?
Sure.
Okay.
So
I stopped sharing.
Okay. The assumptions or the actual forecast? Which one?
Let's show the assumptions if you have
Okay.
some. I think people struggle with the assumptions more than the actual spreadsheet. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I was walking through it, right, and I'll blow this up a sec. It really helped help me with the forecast. So I almost started with the assumptions first to really be able to define, to be able to define, what is my month by month plan? How am I going to, number one, market? What is the first phase of the company? Who is my target market? What does my potential MVP look like? What are the potential costs in that MVP? And then from a product perspective, what are the specific details as to what made up the cost? And it really gave me the opportunity to think through it before I actually put numbers against it.
Okay, so you started with words and concepts.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. Okay, so by doing this, you say, okay, I'm going to have 4 subscription boxes, right?
Yep, exactly.
And it's going to be at wholesale, and then later you were able to plug that into assumptions. Okay,
correct. Yep. And then from there, demonstrating that right now, we're going to target wholesale pricing, but then in the future, be able to negotiate up to the lowest MOQ costs with suppliers. And then being able to demonstrate that in parallel, beyond just the MVP build, we are going to work on a POC, with the USDA and the Drexel Culture Grant. And that you'll see that in the projections as well. And then working through what happens, in 2026, 2027. And then with all of this, I built it into, for 2024 month by month activity, revenue streams, cost of goods sold, and then operating expenses. And really, it helped me really understand, what is number one, what is my goal for each year, and what is the potential revenue streams, potential costs, based on the assumptions that I just showed you guys.
Okay. So, I mean, that's fabulous. And some people even go further with the assumptions. So, if you have, you probably built in a formula for 3 people starting in January, but what some people do with their assumptions is they'll have a backup sheet for salaries, right? And they'll have a backup sheet for production and a backup sheet for each of those things. And then all of those backup sheets feed into that final spreadsheet, which is your So, and the sheet that you used, was that the BYOBB format, right? So it has instructions. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
So you all of you have access to that. Okay. Okay. So let me go back, and I'm going to reshare my screen. And all right. So, again, this is just showing some other examples. And this was a real business. So they had a real full-time accountant who was trying to help them. Because it's very scary for a real business to have this kind of a dip, unless it's a seasonal business, which actually it is. But they built in stuff that you might not think about, like if they're, provide at some point, when it gets past the first person, they start providing salaries without benefits. And then when they got to like 5 people, they started to provide salaries with benefits. So again, those are assumptions that you're making. So, this is an example. Let's see about another one. So for the BYOBB, a couple of things you can do. You can assume in the first year that you're going to win the BYOBB. So you have, what is it, Emily, 40,000 in cash on hand at the beginning?
Grand prize is 40,000.
Okay.
And then it drops down to 20,000 for the first place and so on.
Okay. So, you can assume that, because you can assume you have 40,000 to start, right? But, unless you have a company with a going concern. And so, Jacqueline, it sounds to me like you did have, no, Stephanie, you have a going concern, right? One of the two. I'm sorry. Which one of you has a service business? I apologize. You're both next to me in the boxes.
It's
That's
fine.
okay.
I have a service business.
I'm sorry.
Stephanie has the service business. I was like, I was like, I'm debating about what ours is, because we're looking at creating communal experiences for solo travelers around food and beverage. So it's more partnering with local restaurants and all to deliver on the experience, but we would be doing the marketing and the sales to get the solo travelers into that experience.
Okay. But so you, for example, you don't have any sales yet this year, right?
Right. We have none. No, we're hoping to test this with a focus group in the next 2 months, but we don't have any sales yet.
Okay. It's fine. We don't really have an expectation that most of you will have sales when when you're doing this. So year 1, you'll have real expenses, but most of you won't have real revenue. Some of you might, but most of you will just have real expenses. But so one thing I really recommend is when you do your deck, use your best guess for real dates. Don't say year 1, year 2, year 3. That is fine for for a class where it's just a project. But if it's real business, use 2024 and just here's the expenses we think we're going to have in July, August, September, right? It's your best guess, but it's like you're putting a stake in it that you're really going to start in July or whenever, right? So use real dates. Don't use just year 1. What other useful things do people have here? Yeah, don't be concerned about the variable versus what's called SG&A. Again, these are labels, and we don't care about that as much with this. We care more about your thought process and but be exhaustive. Salaries, the channel costs. We're looking at a medical device company right now, and their initial channel for distribution was using a third-party company that has all the relationships with the doctors in their field. And they were spending a lot of money on that channel, but they thought they would get a lot of revenue from it. They learned they weren't really getting the revenue they thought they'd get from the channel. So now they have to hire someone themselves to do the work. So, really think about salaries, channel costs, marketing, all those little things. And then, when do you think you'll break even? When do you think you'll be profitable? But it's okay. We don't expect people to be profitable in year 1, maybe not in year 2. And if you're in the life sciences world, you may not be profitable for 10 years. So, but you need to be able to show an upside. So there needs to be a story there, right? Of how you will eventually make money. So
Ellen,
yes.
Ellen, I had a quick question. If you go back, and I was going back and forth in my head if I do it there. So for revenue, right? So beyond the BYOBB, if we're submitting for grants,
It's not revenue though. Do not count.
It's not considered revenue. Okay.
It's money that you have access to. If you're trying to think about where will I get that first 40,000 to do what I need to do, assume you win the BYOBB. But it's not revenue. Okay. And nor is if you got government money, that is not revenue. If you raise money, someone invests in your company, it's not revenue.
Okay, that's clear. Thank you.
Prove that your product will sell. it proves that you're really good at getting grants or winning competitions.
Got it.
Okay.
Okay. Yep.
Okay.
Thanks.
And then, so you want to do a sanity check, make sure that the financials should show you if you're being rational, right? I've had students who created financials which showed them making 40,000 in year 3 and maybe 45,000 in year 4 for salary. And I was like, are you really going to be able to run a business where you don't make any money until year 3 or year 4, right? And they're like, no. So you have to pay yourself. It's got to be reflected in there. And there needs to be enough of an upside that someone would invest, and not all companies are investable. So if you're doing a company that's not going to get money from investors, then you do want to get to revenue faster. So, Stephanie, with your programs, you should be able to get to revenue pretty quickly, right? Once you get your,
we are, yeah.
So that's good. So you should be able to get to revenue pretty quickly. And you're probably not going to get money from investors unless there's some way that you're applying some kind of technology solution to it. But that's okay. Not every business needs to have investors behind it. The best businesses, some of the best businesses do not. So, that's not a measure of success, whether you're going to raise money from investors or not. Some businesses, Linda's an example, she can't do it unless she gets an investment, I don't think, right? You need that money. But you're going to show a big enough upside in a couple of years that makes an investor say, okay, I'll invest 500,000 in your company now, with the idea that my 500,000 will be worth 5 million, in 5 to 7 years. That's kind of the mental math that investors do. And that's a whole nother topic for another day. But the key is it should be a rational business strategy. So for example, if you've got a company, like Stephanie, your company probably doesn't need a whole lot of you're not going to do mass marketing expense. You're going to do very targeted marketing expenses, right? You know who your customers are. You probably have a few of them already, right? You might go to a trade show or some kind of conference.
Yep.
So your business should not show mass marketing expenses. But let's say you want to be the next Blue Apron and you're going to launch a national food delivery company. You've got to have major marketing dollars put in, right? Because that stuff, it's viral, but it takes money for it to be viral. So you need to make sure that your projections match reality and match your business strategy. And one of the things that the reviewers who are looking at your plans will look at is, do these financials reflect the strategy, right? Do the numbers work with the strategy? Questions. I've talked a lot, more than I like to. Questions. Okay.
I do have a question, Ellen, if no one else is going to jump in.
Mhm.
So you know how you just compared mine and Linda's companies, which, was a very fair comparison. Like, I'm not going to be looking for investors, and that's not what my business is. And obviously Linda needs that. So is that kind of also taken into consideration from a BYOB standpoint?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. It's taken into consideration. You're not going to get dinged, and you're not going to get dinged because you don't need financing. Linda's not going to get dinged because she does. But Stephanie, you better show a case for why you need that $40,000 from the BYOBB.
Understood.
That's important. Okay.
Yeah.
That's important. So what you use for that. But so people are going to look at the business, they're just going to look at them differently. But the strategy has to make sense. If you were building Linda's business and you didn't say, I'm going to need a transfusion of cash of 500,000 in a year or two, I'm going to say Linda doesn't understand her business, right? So it's not just going to happen. A lot of times I talk to scientists in particular who say, hey, as soon as I develop this thing, everybody's going to want it. I don't need to spend any money on marketing. Well, no, that's not right. So you've got to understand your business, your industry. How do things get sold? What are the channels? I love the what's the business model book? The Canvas book. If you haven't used the Canvas book, I highly recommend it, because that's where you can test all of your assumptions and think through things that you might have not thought through. I love the business model Canvas for so many reasons. Your growth projections actually should be aggressive, not ridiculous, and not grounded in fact. But we don't want you to be conservative. We want you to be thinking big, right? So, because, Stephanie, if you're going to be, if you're selling programs, you need to sell enough programs to make a salary, right? That will support you, and maybe other people that you want to hire. We want to see a growth strategy, right? It just doesn't need to be the same kind of growth strategy that Linda might have to show. But so we want you to be aggressive. We want to dream. The investors and the reviewers want to dream alongside with you and think that you're really growing something great. But we don't want it to be, again, we don't want it to be unrealistic. So sometimes I see 10, I see 10 plans a day, so I'm a little jaded. But, when I see someone send me a plan and they're showing me it's March of 2024, they haven't completed developing their product yet. It's not out in the market, and they predict 2 million of sales in 2024. I'm sending it back. Okay. I'm nice, Linda, right? I'm nice, but I'll send it back and say, I just don't understand how you can get to 2 million when it's March of 2024 and your product's not in the market yet. So please think about those assumptions. Okay. And not everybody's as nice as I am. So, you need to keep that in mind. So, anyways, the other thing is you want to look at, so, and revenue projection should also, if you're talking in your presentation about the target opportunity, you want to use your model, you want to build up. Okay. When you're talking about market opportunity, you're starting at the top and building down, right? So, drug dispensers are, a $2 billion business, and we're focused on a dispenser for asthma, and we're focused on high stakes asthma for people who go in hospitals, right? So that, you're showing your market opportunity. So you're starting from the very top, and then you're whittling your way down. And so the opportunity is, let's just use a round number, is $10 million, right? So when you're doing your market opportunity, you're starting from that way. When you're building your projections, you're going from the ground up. We think we can sell 100, we think we can sell 100 dispensers to Penn, and 1,000 dispensers to Temple, and 2,000 dispensers to Jefferson. Okay. And that gets us to a certain number times the cost, da, 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 da. So when you're doing your financials, you're building from the ground up, but you want to do a reality check. Does that make sense in light of what you thought your target market was, right? And so you want to think about that. You also want to look at gross margins for your product. Is the gross margin for your product in line with the industry? So, and that's where, again, I think it's Adam. I can't remember what I called him before. Adam in the business library. He can show you what and you can Google, what gross margins are basically in your industry. There should always be some kind of comparison point, right? So for if you're building let's use an example, if you're comparing against travel agencies, right? What's their gross margin look like? You should kind of match up with them. Or you should be better. You never want to have a worse gross margin than your competition. And then, but you want to be realistic, right? So unless you're doing something super different from your competition, You're not going to have lower costs just because, you're nicer than the next person. So why do you think your gross margins will be less? And then again, your funding requests should be based on projected cash shortfalls. And again, make sure in this case that your projected cash shortfall is at least 40,000, because that's the grand prize for the BYOBB. If you told me you only needed 20,000, I'm probably not going to be that excited to make you the grand prize winner, right? So, that's the sanity check. Okay. And just remember, they're estimates. They're always going to change. Again, nobody expects your numbers to be accurate. We just want to see how much thinking did you put into it, and are they reasonable? Do they make sense? And then again, a really good mentor can help you adjust your financials by your showing them what the financials are, what you think your assumptions are. So that's the detailed financials. And then you get to put it into a pitch deck. So here's an example of a financials pitch deck. Now notice this is in the hundreds. This is in the thousands, right? So revenues. So what this is saying is in 2021, well, let's say it's 2020, the year is 2020 right now, right? So in 2021, we're anticipating $277,000 of revenue. That's what they're saying there, okay? And so if you're looking at revenue that's going to be in the thousands, and I hope you are, then do use this. Am I still sharing? I'm sharing. Okay. Can you see my cursor around the thousands? Yeah. So use this model. It does make sense. Millions is not that realistic. But using thousands is really, it's what investors are used to looking at. If you don't expect to get at that high a level, then you can just use regular numbers, but just make it clear that that's what you're doing. So this first line are the drivers. So of course, in your detailed presentation, you thought through a whole lot of detail, but here, just kind of give us an idea. So, in the injectables, the device model that I used, it could be, how many hospitals and how many, or it could be how many devices do you think you're going to sell? What are the drivers? So, who haven't I picked on yet? Well, Jacqueline, I haven't. Oh, Tom, we haven't picked on you. Tom, what's your driver?
It's number of devices sold.
Okay, number of devices sold.
It could be number of hospitals signed up as well, which
Okay,
they should
great.
correlate.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So yeah, if it's a standard number of devices per hospital, you could use number of hospitals. If you think it might really vary, then you probably do want to stick. You do probably want to stick with drivers. And you might even have multiple drivers. You want to keep this simple, but if you were starting, Tom, let's say you were starting with one indication for the first few years, and then you were looking at a device for another indication, then you might want to show 2 lines of drivers, possibly, or you might just show a big jump and explain why the jump. Okay, in a footnote down at the bottom. And footnotes are useful in pitch decks, but don't go crazy. Like, there's too many footnotes on here, but this is a teaching tool, not a competitive slide. Okay, so you've got the revenues here. So this person is saying by 2024, they expect to have $28 million in revenue. Well, that gets me excited, right? That's a great number to see. Now, again, reality, if in life sciences, if they haven't gone through, if it's 2020 and they're showing us 277,000 next year, and they haven't gone through the FDA process, that's probably not realistic. Let's use, Stephanie, I'm going to pick on you again. So let's say, what do you charge per program?
$5,000.
$5,000. Okay.
Yep.
$5,000 flat.
Yep.
Good. That's easy, right?
Yep.
So, and that's based on, do you have one instant per client, or might you do it multiple times at a client?
Well, so it's 2,500 per series. It's a 2-part series, so $5,000 for the company.
Okay, but it's not like you're gonna, it's not like you're gonna do one division of a company, and then we call it land and expand. You start in a company and then you might have multiple.
No, but landing and expanding. So like I would go to like the Philly law firm and then hopefully expanding to like that law firm's other cities, if that makes sense. Is that
makes
landing and
perfect
expanding?
sense.
Okay.
That's landing and expanding. That's a
Yeah.
beautiful example. Thank you. Now that's part of what you're building into your assumptions. That's a perfect example. Now, if you were selling your program through the law firms, you were asking the law firms to bring this program to their clients, they then become a channel, right? And so you might have assumptions about how many channels do you have, and what can you expect from the channels, and what do you have to pay the channels, if anything, right? So those are some of the assumptions you think about. Okay, so I do like to see key revenue drivers up here. Everyone should be able to have some kind of revenue driver. If it's a set, if you're doing an app, it's the number of users, right?
I was
So
like, Ellen, I was like, since our example is about, it's kind of, and the way I'm thinking about it is selling experiences. The driver is a food experience or a beverage experience. It's not necessarily like the people participating, but it's the number of experiences sold.
It could be. Yep. So that's how you're that's how you're thinking about your revenue model, right?
Yeah.
So is that about, like, do you have to sign up restaurants or
Yep.
theaters?
Yeah.
So do they pay you a percentage? How does it work?
We were thinking that the traveler, whatever they pay in total for like a prefix or chef selection menu, we're going to take a cut of that ticket price.
Okay. So one of the things you're going to work out is, where's the money really coming from? Is it coming from the end user, or is it coming from the restaurateur?
Right.
Yeah. And so your model is still probably its number of experiences, and you're going to have to think through, where does that come from? Yeah, that's interesting.
Okay.
Okay. So some form of drivers, just something to let us know what you're thinking about and how you're thinking about it, right? If your revenue was coming, if you were the POS system, for example, then the driver would be number of restaurants that you're selling the POS system to. So you can see how high level and easy this is to look at. You've got drivers going across. And what I like about this is, it's not what some people do is they'll show 100 in year 1, 200 in year 2. They'll double it and put 400 in year 3, and let's double it again and show 800 in year 4. That's not how the world works, right? So this should match up to your assumptions. And I don't need to see the assumptions in the pitch deck, but you better be able to answer my questions about about how you got there. And then the revenues should flow from the drivers, and there should be a clear linkage, between revenues and drivers. Doesn't have to be exactly 1-for-1, because there would be different things that might keep it from being 1-for-1. But if you were like here, they more than doubled their drivers, but they didn't more than double their revenues. Why not? That might cost that will. I pause when I look at that, and I want to understand why that is. Okay. I would also, you'll see that expenses did not double, even though drivers doubled. And I like that. That tells me that there's some economies of scale, right? That they are able to save some money the more things they sell. And I like to see that. That's a good thing. And then EBITDA, or net income. EBITDA is a fancy way of saying, I have to think.
Expenses before interest,
expensive.
taxes. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not expensive. I got stuck on the E, but anyways, yes, before all those things we're talking about: interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. So, because again, we don't care about that. All right. So what do you like about this slide and what don't you like about it?
I agree with it. The decimals are a bit unnecessary in the 2021.
And this is actually rounded, so it's almost acceptable. Even though I will tell everybody to always round, I'll show you an example in a few minutes. And it just fried me because I talked to that entrepreneur like 6 times and they still put in the detail. I think it's very readable. I think it's probably very logical. They are showing, a deficit in year 1. They are showing profitability in year 2. They should be able to tell me when they get to break even. They should be able to tell me how much money they need. And if we gave them more, would they maybe be able to accelerate faster? Those are the kind of things that someone's going to ask. And you want to have some control over that information. Okay. Oh, I just saw there's some stuff in chat. Is that for me? Or that's just Emily helping? Okay. I don't mean just Emily. That is Emily helping. Thank you. Okay. And then the other thing is people always think they're going to help us out by showing a graph because the graph will show us just how high up the revenue goes. Don't do it. This is what investors and reviewers want to see. It's what we're trained to see. It's what we're comfortable seeing. You're not helping yourself by showing something different. You could have a slide in your deck which just focuses on growth of drivers, and show that what we call the hockey stick. That'd be great. But when it comes down to the financial projections, this is what I want to see. Okay. This is not the place to be creative. Lots of other places to be creative. Okay. Let's see. So this is one that's cleaned up without the decimals and just a few more. Oh yeah. So I kind of went through, the nice thing about this is most of the people who give this presentation were very consistent in our thinking. So, right. If you receive funding sooner, could you scale faster? Could you become profitable sooner? When do you reach break even? Yeah. All those things I mentioned. Okay. This is so this is a slide from an entrepreneur I worked with. Now she still won the BYOBB, so that's good. But so I guess I answered my question. What's one of the things that's wrong with this slide is she won in 2017, right? There is no way she could tell me that in 2021 she would have $7,305,823 in cost. There's just no way. That's a level of certainty that's just ridiculous, right? So that's another reason to round. Okay. It's just a ridiculous level of certainty. What else is wrong with this slide? From a common sense and how you're telling your story perspective. What else is wrong? This is not it's not for a grade. It helps to see some of the things that people do. Go ahead.
I mean, when you want to show your revenue ahead of your costs.
Yes. Oh. This person was being creative again. Don't be creative. There's a accounting is one of the few things that's very straightforward. And you're already, you're deviating from most accounting and finance stuff because you're making these numbers up, right? These are just assumptions. These are guesses. Sometimes these are wild guesses. Sometimes I would even use the phrase, these are wild ass guesses, right? So stick with the norms where you can. And then, it really helps us to look at this quickly. Yes, I want to see that based on the number of companies that you're selling to, and this is the number of employees that are using the system. This isn't the internal number of employees. So they're showing a land and expand. The first 2 companies, we have 500 employees, but it gets much, we can get almost, 1,000. We'll get to some bigger companies over time. And we'll get bigger customers and we'll get a higher base of customers. So that's why they're showing us both companies and employees. And you can see that the numbers really do track with these numbers very nicely. And, sometimes they don't track and there's a reason for it. So, in year 1, you might have had 1,000, you might have had 2 companies, but you did it for free just to test out your model, right? So that's fine. You want to help us, that's where I would have an asterisk and say 2018 is, the year of we're doing betas, right? And we'll change to a paying model in 2019. Anything else with the slide? I love the caption. The financial outlook is awesome. It's just, the person who presented this just resonated confidence. It was great, but you're not going to put that if that's not the case. So, but it's nice to have a headline that goes beyond just our financials. So think about, every slide should tell a story and should transition nicely from the slide before it. Okay. So what are some of the things that an investor or a reviewer looks when they see a P&L? They're looking at the burn rate if you gave them a quarterly P&L, they might see the burn rate. This is if you were showing the detail in your, well, you will in your, not in the slide deck. This is your, your more detailed thing. They might look at, what's your runway, what's the revenue, investors are always trying to make sure, do you have enough runway? So if you have X dollars in the bank and you're asking for Y dollars, does that get you to where you need to get? Or are you going to find yourself like almost getting there, but not quite getting there, right? So that's one of the things they want to know. This is a slide that I like to see, in addition to just the, in addition to the financial projections, building up to the financial projections, there's a couple things I like to see. So one of them is, what is your business model and how much are you going to make from the client, right? So, we're going to start with, this is a B2B SaaS, which is software, right? So we're starting with a free model. So we're not making any money out of that. And we hope to get people to a pro model, which will cost the company $9,000 to $18,000 per year for teams of 250 to 1,000. And then the premium model is 18 to 35K for teams of 250 to 10,000. So this is for bigger teams. So no, it is for teams of 250 to 1,000. Never mind. But so this is a real, this is a real presentation that a company sent me. So this gives you a sense of how do you think, it gives me, the investor, a sense of how does person think they're going to make money. Okay. And then this is unit economics. And I really love it if you're selling a device or, like a physical good, or I guess even software. So, and you can show this all different ways. You can be a little creative with this. So this is an example where the price that this company is selling it to, they have what they're calling a landed cost, a cost per unit of $24. And then CAC is, what it costs them to acquire a customer. So, think about it. Like if someone's selling Blue Apron, that may be an old example, but, food deliveries, they'll usually give you, or you might get those Uber Eats ads, we're going to give you $50 of Uber Eats for free, because they're trying to hook you. It's a little insidious. They totally did that with me with Uber. So they get you hooked, right? And so that's the acquisition cost to get a customer on board. Linda's, if you're selling through to doctors, there's some kind of acquisition cost to get the doctors to do it, perhaps. So everybody's got a cost of acquisition, and you want to really think through that. It's one of your most important numbers. And then $64 is the contribution margin. It's the or the gross margin. It's the how much how much am I making before all those things that we talked about, like, like software and employee salaries and things like that. So I'm making $64 per unit. And hopefully over time, that contribution margin is going to get bigger over time because you're getting better at building the product and you're getting better at finding the right customers. So you're not wildly spending, right? Blue Apron had to learn who are my best customers to kind of target so that they could narrow their costs. I don't think they ever got that good at it. It's one of the reasons why, they had so many problems. So, so for some of you, what do you think of as your acquisition costs? Customer acquisition. What's it going to cost you to acquire customers? Tom?
It's going to require people that understand selling to hospitals and getting out there in front of whoever they need to influence in the hospitals.
Okay. So you think you're going with a one of the firms that directly, yes, yeah. Yeah. So it's not your own sales force. You're going to use someone else's sales force, right?
That's a TBD. Yeah.
So then in that case, that's not contribute. If you are hiring people, that part is not part of the cost of acquisition of a customer. That's your sales cost. That's your general sales cost. But I think your example is kind of interesting. It's a little bit different. I usually think of CAC like with tech stuff and with like Glenda, your stuff. I would think you. What kind of acquisition costs do you think you have?
Yeah, so there's social media expense, marketing events, conferences, essentially everything to build that funnel of customers. Knowing that all that we could be spending $100 just to get $1 back, just because of the market that we're in. So yeah, trying to build as big of a customer funnel as we can, realizing that CAC is going to be incredibly high in the early phases of the company.
So anyway, so I find this really, I find this to be very helpful, especially, consumer products. I absolutely want to see this. Okay. It's consumer product, this is one of the first things I want to see. If you're building something, I really want to see this because it just gives us a sense. You may remember Simply Good Jars. That's a Temple company. When he did a great version of this. He actually used, it's the salad in a jar, and he actually used his salad in a jar to show, where the lines were for his costs and stuff. I thought it was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. So you can be very creative with that. Let me see if I have anything else. I think these are just more words. Before we get into this last part, are there any questions you have about financials? Anything? Do you all have mentors that you're working with that are being helpful? No? Emily, do we need to do something to make sure people have good mentors?
If anyone's interested in being connected with a mentor, be sure to email us. Email us at byobb@temple.edu. We did originally send out an interest form at the beginning of this whole BYOBB process for anyone that had any inquiries. And if you continue to have inquiries through the process, be sure to just email us. Our email is also on our website, which I believe I included in a link, and I am just sending a link now to the application page, which also has our email. But on Startup Tree, there's you can connect directly with your mentors. But yeah.
And they do a good, IEI does a good job of matching the mentors to the participants. I've known a bunch of the mentors I brought in a lot of the mentors. So some of them are really, 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 really good. So use them. Don't let them tell you how to run your business, right? They should just be asking you some of the hard questions. Where did you come up with that number? What does that mean? Have you thought about I'll keep going back to insurance because it's an easy one. They're going to ask you some of those costs. Tom, have you thought about, an internal service? I'm just saying, they're going to ask you those questions. And so I find them very helpful, but don't let them start telling you need to do this, okay? Or you need to do that. It's still your company, and you're the boss of you. But I find them to be really helpful. Any other questions before I turn this back over to Emily to talk about what's left to happen? Okay. Emily, do you want to take over on this slide?
Perfect. Yeah. So we have 2 weeks left until the submission deadline. As it says on the screen, the submission deadline is Wednesday, March 27th at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for anyone that's not in our time zone. We do have 2 more workshops, as I said at the beginning. We have our Pitching 101 workshop next Wednesday at 5 p.m., again virtual, which will be inviting Jake Voorhees. He is a new guest speaker for us. He actually was on Shark Tank and was able to get a very big investment, as well as on TEDx. He is a graduate from University of Delaware and is a big part of Philly Startup Leaders, which is a group here in Philly that helps entrepreneurs connect with others and expand their business. So he will be here next week, which will be amazing to have him. On Monday, March 25th is our expert mentoring night. So if you're not able to meet with a mentor on our platform one-on-one, you can meet in this workshop where the mentors will each have their own breakout room, and you can go room to room to connect with everyone, and possibly even hear from some of the suggestions on other people's applications and workshops, or applications or ideas, gosh. And then again, submission deadline is March 27th. As we make our way through this process, make sure you're doing your research on your application. Don't submit something that there's 20 other businesses already doing the same exact thing. And often, if they're already started, they're probably more successful than you are at this point. So try and, if it is a similar idea, try and make your idea a bit more unique. What are you offering that's different than them? And if you are offering something different, make sure to emphasize that in your application. And with that, validate your idea. Make sure everything's feasible to happen. As much as we love seeing new ideas pop up, don't make something up that doesn't exist or is impossible to get to.
And I just want to clarify one thing. So the question came up about about the 40,000. So typically, this is my view, and I think they're still doing this way, but maybe Alan should confirm. Alan or Greg should confirm this. But I don't include it as revenue, unless some people do what's called a cash flow statement, and then you could show it as a source of cash, but it's not revenue. Okay. Revenue is from sales of goods or services. So I would not include it as revenue in your spreadsheet. And you want to show enough of a gap anyways to say, this is why I need $40,000 and here's how I'd use it. Okay.
Correct. I would not include that in your financial statements, as it's a projection. There's no guarantee you are gonna win the 40,000. It may be less. Or in a scenario, it could be more. So I'd leave that out of the income statement, as Ellen said. After the submission deadline passes, wait a couple of weeks, I believe 4 weeks after the submission deadline, you will receive your feedback from our reviewers. So if you're not a finalist, either way, you get some amazing feedback from our reviewers who are professionals in this industry and have years and years of experience as entrepreneurs and investors. So there's some great people on our list. And they will help you be able to tailor your business to see better ways of improving it, or they can open your eyes and see if it's feasible or not. But we have some amazing feedback from previous applicants and winners who say, although winning the prize money was great, they thought the feedback was more crucial for their business. And then Ellen, you're good to go to the next slide.
Trying.
I know, it gets so slow. And then cash prizes, we have a guaranteed over $100,000 in cash prizes. This cash money is required to go towards your business. So that is one stipulation. If this is simply an idea, make sure you're starting that idea, as this money cannot go towards yourself. It has to go towards the business entity. If you are interested in just simply applying for the idea, I would recommend our other two competitions, the Innovative Idea Competition, which is in November, and Changemaker Challenge, which just passed at the end of February. So cash prizes is over $100,000, and I am pulling up our in-kind packages as we just confirmed a bigger number today. We have a guaranteed over $125,000 in in-kind packages. So total over $200,000. And in-kind packages are packages and services provided by our sponsors. We have a couple law firms, a couple marketing companies, and other business startups who help with consulting. So these are packages that you can use with a complimentary prize amount that they have provided. And then additionally, as it says on the screen, we have a couple sponsored awards. The Digital Innovation Award is sponsored by the Digital Innovation Foundry here at Temple. So that's an optional application in the competition page that you can apply to, as well as the Global Innovation Award, the DEI Award for businesses that focus on DEI or are run by a person of color. And then the iCorps Award is a new one for this year, which is sponsored by the Blackstone Launchpad, which provides the opportunity to work with iCorps.
Cool. Is there more?
I think there's one more. And then for anyone that is here for the suitable points, be sure to scan this code to get your points for tonight. We are all set. Thank you. If anyone has any questions, feel free to either turn on your sound now or again, email us at byobb@temple.edu.